Yes, well, first of all, welcome everybody to this evening, which is hosted by the RSB, obviously, and is dedicated to a showcase of a success case study. And this is the organization of the Young Biologist Forum, which is an event that is organized by the RSB and our undergrad students from Royal Holloway, and particularly the BioSoc, and particularly by a group of very determined students, very professional, clever, and led by Olivia, who is here, which is our speaker this evening. And I might just say that Olivia is a recent graduate. She graduated in zoology with a first. Not that it's a surprise, but you know, it's a great achievement. And together with the BioSoc students, I think she represents the population of students that really, as lecturers, we dream about, that are engaged, enthusiastic, creative, sociable, and positive. And I'm sure we will know more about them in the future in terms of research or their work in general. But to be honest, I'm looking forward now to know more about what she's been doing. Not that I don't know, but it's a moment sort of to tell us what she did to organize this, which we called it a success because it has been going on for a couple of years, and also during the pandemic. And I have to say that they managed to raise stellar engagement from students and in person as well during a very complicated period. And despite lightning, and I remember like pouring rain, and it was really a very great day. And so please, I just need to say that it's recorded. Olivia will give an outlook of the event, and then what we would like really is to have a Q&A and an occasion for exchange of opinion and views, in order also to direct future effort to widening engagement or new formats and whatever people think could be very useful. So I leave it to over to you, Olivia, and hopefully Ian will help to moderate with the chat later. And please, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so hi, I'm Olivia. I know a couple of you anyways, either from Royal Holloway or the Royal Society of Biology. But this year, obviously I've just graduated, but this year I've been president of the Biological Sciences Society at Royal Holloway. And last year I was actually working with Melanie as VP. So we've done this now for 2 years, and it's been fantastic for both. And both years presented a different set of challenges and successes. So I'm going to talk you through those as well, just explaining how we've sort of moved through with the event and why it's been so different. So I will just share my screen. I don't know if you can see me at the same time, but Either way, you just need to see the screen. Okay, there you go. Yes, so this is just about how it's a student-led event. So it's very different. I think that's the first and the main difference between this and any other sort of careers event, is that it is underpinned by us students. We're the ones who decide who's coming, how it's working. You know, we obviously get support from staff, but the brunt of the suggested speakers comes from us. So our broad inspiration for this event was looking from, like I said, a student perspective and having sort of like a specialized careers event. So we have a fantastic careers service at Royal Holloway, but what you normally have is sort of people that have been in the field for quite some time, or sort of loose connections, and you're not really sure how to establish them well. So what we also wanted to do was, after sort of a lack of engagement, was to go against COVID and try to get in-person networking happening again, because that was the one thing. I was fortunate enough at my school that we had careers events and networking events throughout my time, and that was something that I actually missed coming to university. I went, oh, quite like to do that. It's really how you get to know people. You know, people say all the time, say, oh, you really have to talk with them, they won't know you otherwise. And unfortunately, that's true. So what we managed to do, and what we were aiming to do anyways, was to increase the engagement not just within our department or within Royal Holloway, but also within our sort of more local community. And that was massively helped through outreach from the Royal Society of Biology. And when we looked back, so we did this survey, we did this year, asking why students actually attended our event, just to understand what they pulled out of it, aside from the on-the-day feedback. And most of it was actually just about getting those personal connections in and also understanding what's out there in the field. That was the primary thing that when we were considering it in the first year, and we just thought, well, okay, what's going to make this different from just any careers event that the department could put together? What is it that we want to learn about? You go, well, I'm already studying, say, zoology. It's quite a niche degree. Aside from research or working in a zoo, that's the only thing people have ever told me I can do. So I'd really like to know how I can expand it. And the same goes for the molecular side. People go, oh yeah, I'm going to go into medicine and I'll become a doctor. But the pathway is actually really unclear. So that was something that we sort of wanted to set straight, was the exact routes you could take and where it could take you. So in our first year, this is something we didn't repeat, but this was like incredibly, it gave us great insight into what students wanted to hear. And if you are setting up your own event, especially if it's the first time, I would really recommend this, because this really helped us hit the ground running. So we wanted to understand what the degree stream most of our attendees were going to be studying. And then we also gave everybody a few options, as you can see, like civil servant or science communication. We kept them sort of broad, and that just helped us to cherry pick who we wanted to come speak. And then we also asked students if there was actually a specific area or company that they had in mind. And this revealed two things to us. The first one is that most people sort of just had a general idea of what they wanted to do. They weren't sure if there was a degree stream for it, where they could go with it afterwards. And there were some people that understood exactly where they wanted to go. They just needed to know those avenues or those pathways or get those connections in. So where that led us to was, in terms of speaker selection, the easiest platform we had was LinkedIn. We went through some personal contacts, but obviously not all of them pan out anyways. And LinkedIn gives you a really broad range of people to choose from. We were also looking at like the tags, so if who they work for, or if they were an alumni, because obviously once you're an alumni as well, you already have that environment to reach out into. And then we read their about sections, and we were basically looking for key terms and going, okay, somebody mentioned that they wanted to study their master's in aquatic science. So we picked that out, and we just sort of base it around that. And we were fortunate enough that within our society, we have a pretty even split between molecular and organismal representatives. So we divided the work that way, and that we as organismal students were choosing organismal speakers because we understood exactly what we were looking for, and we could extrapolate that to our classmates. And so then we get to our two events. So we have 2022 on the left-hand side and this year's on the right-hand side. Both events were like utterly fantastic, and they were very successful, just in slightly different ways. So in 2022, obviously we had COVID. So we required a negative flow test for the day, but that obviously has since disintegrated. We did start out doing a hybrid event. However, and this is something I'll come on to later, it was incredibly complicated and really difficult to manage. And honestly, I would just advise against it, as much as it was exciting. And you can see that we actually had students chime in from Italy. We had some connections out there who were interested in hearing about the career pathways. And that was fantastic to have them on board, but it meant that half the room was neglected at any one stage, and it was just really difficult to monitor and make sure that it was set up, and then recording, and how we getting people in admin rooms and everything. So we've scrapped that, but you can see the attendance anyways. The attendance for in-person nearly doubled to this year, which was actually like fantastic. And I think it shows that this sort of event is something that students are actually looking for. The amount of speakers and the event length we had remained pretty constant. We basically allocated a whole day. We did a weekend, so we did a Saturday both times, and we did 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. And I will show you, these are our two schedules for the 2 years. And it just is showing that we didn't have talks until 5 p.m. Like, it wasn't, the whole day wasn't filled. And I think that was one of the key successes in this case, was that we allocated networking time, which is something you wouldn't strictly think about. But the way we had the rooms set up is we had two breakout rooms, basically. We had one for organismal students and one for molecular students, because that was something that we'd realized as well, is that, so I do zoology, I've just graduated with zoology, but as a zoologist, unfortunately, I don't have much interest in the molecular side of things. And I know that's just how I'm wired. Whereas I know I've got a friend, she's set to study medicine, and she goes, yeah, I'm sorry, but I'd never want to hear about how to keep chickens, and that's just how it is. So this way, having breakout rooms actually worked fantastically. It meant you could move between the two, because we have some students that do just straight biology, are pretty down the line and want to switch in and out of rooms. So having a schedule up for the day, we allocated about half an hour for each talk, and it just gave people the opportunity to go into one room, attend a talk, and then go into the other if they wanted, or step out into the hallway and mingle there. But to make sure that people weren't skipping out on stuff, especially if you go in unsure of what you want to do and you're going to listen to all the talks, we had a longer lunch period, and we also had networking at the end of the day. I should also mention that we had a welcome in our main auditorium at the beginning of the day, and that was held by the RSB. And that was pretty useful in terms of just getting people oriented for the day. They understand where everything is, but they also understand why they're there. And I think that's something, and I'll mention it at the end, but I think that's also something that can be expanded on for next year. So throughout the 2 years, though, we kept the same target audience and questions that we wanted answered. So we just looked up colleges and university within our areas. We focused on those that had either a biological sciences program or had a biological sciences society. Just it meant that already they were that bit more interested and more likely to engage with us. This can obviously be extrapolated to wherever you're staying. And then the questions are down at the bottom, and these are what we asked all of the speakers to answer if they could and if they were comfortable to. Because when you're going into, and I'm sure everybody remembers it, and I'm just starting in it, but when you're looking at jobs and you're going, okay, well, I need to know what's the personality like. Am I going to thrive in that environment? Because what if I absolutely hate teamwork, or I don't want to work at all hands-on, or different things. So people have different considerations. And as well, one that was occasionally a little bit difficult to pinpoint was also the salary and the lifestyle that's associated with it. But we thought that in asking these questions, having the society ask the speakers instead of people having to go up individually and ask, because it's a bit of an awkward question to pose, and it's not one that's as freely talked about perhaps as we would like. So I think it was really important to understand what you can expect later in life. If you go, my starting salary is 50k or 18k, there's very different ranges of the spectrum, and it's really important for students going into that to know it. Because unfortunately, sometimes it can alter what you're going to do. So that's what we asked speakers to answer us. And then we get on to the fun sort of considerations for the day and sort of rough budgeting costs. If you are recreating an event, a lot of the cost is dependent on how many attendees you have. And this is one of the sort of the complications that you have with it. But the main thing is that this is a free event for students. And when you provide food, especially given it's a whole day and you're covering transport costs for speakers, whether they're driving in or taking public transport. And so that was one of the main considerations. We set aside, I would say, anywhere from £300 to £500 if you're doing a larger event is really good to cover you. And also it's just dealing with your local companies to get any discounts and things when you're hosting these sorts of events. But then, as I said, to monitor this, because it's really dependent on how many attendees you have, you need to have something to understand where you're headed. So we used Eventbrite. This is from the previous years. You can see we've got online options. That was actually really useful. It also let us know where we were at with capacity, and it allowed us to ask questions about the attendees, so where they were coming from, which is how we got to understand what universities were attending, what companies were coming. We also understood if people needed to park on the day, and we submitted those for them. So that was just something that was really useful. Obviously, you might already have something in place that works better. And then the other consideration is the location. So with us, we didn't have to factor in any budgeting for the location because it's provided free through the university. So we just had to book it out. And the reason we chose the Windsor building is it has in the bottom right-hand corner, you can see the main auditorium. That's what we use to welcome everybody in. It gives people a base. And then we had the hallway. They're the two left-hand pictures that's empty and full when we had our pizzas out. And that just provides a networking area as well as a space to set up teas, coffees, and then we hosted the lunch there. And that was something actually that we learnt, I hate to say the hard way, but through the 2 years. So the first year we took the speakers out for a lunch. We took them, it was just down the road, but this was the year we had torrential downpour, there was traffic. And actually what we ended up realizing is that it didn't give the speakers an opportunity to mingle with the attendees whilst they were eating and having this time off. So it sort of removed a networking time. So this year we put everybody back in that main hallway and it worked fabulously. People sat around, everybody was talking, it was really fluid, and it sort of just got everything going a lot better. And then the final reason we chose the Windsor building was that it had breakout rooms, and these had presenter technology as well as a flexible room layout. And this just let us move people, people can move where they need to be. It gave people space. We had in our first year, one of the molecular speakers, he actually brought a piece of equipment, which was, I believe it was a portable ultrasound or MRI machine. And everybody loved that. So that was something that was really exciting, and it was only able to happen because of this location. And then some of these challenges, some of them I've already touched on, but we had the hybridization. The easiest thing to do for that is get rid of it. The only thing I can say is that I don't know, obviously, if some of you have done lectures or any teaching when you've had to do online and in person, you know that your attention is split, and it was the same thing. So the easiest thing I can say for that is to get rid of it. The other challenge is sort of speaker incentives. We are asking quite a bit of speakers to come out for a full day. You're asking a lot of attendees anyways, but they're there for their own benefit. Whereas speakers are coming out for a full day free of charge. So what we did is we covered transport. This year we also did small gifts, but it's something that maybe if you have it in your budget to consider something and try work that out. You have last minute dropouts. So this year we had one of the doctors, she was called in on emergency, so she actually wasn't able to make her slot. And we had one of our organismal speakers, and I actually worked with him. He was stuck up in Manchester because of train strikes, so he gave his talk virtually. This is the only time the hybridization actually worked for us, because it was done the other way around, but that is something that can happen if your speakers are either further afield or even potentially abroad. The other thing to consider too was also the lower attendance than what was than people have signed up for. So both years, I don't know how, but both years we managed to hit train strike days. So we suffered a couple of losses on that, and then, like I said, we had the last minute dropout from one of our speakers due to a medical commitment. And that sort of feeds in then too as well when you're organizing any food and drinks. And we also did name tags for people. That's just sort of difficult to estimate when you've got sort of fluctuating numbers, as well as giving speakers an estimate of how many people you think might attend. Because if you say you're presenting to a room of 5 versus you're presenting to a room of 30, those are, different considerations and what they can do as a benefit for themselves too. But overall, when we're looking sort of at the event, these are two. The first one is sort of it's a general takeaway from one of the students that attended, but it was just really interesting that they actually pulled away the salary, because especially I don't know the molecular side as well, but in the organismal side, it's sort of a very different. It feels like there's limited options to start with, and then you also have sort of a lower starting salary when you're getting into consultancy or working in a zoo and different things, and difficult hours, and we had a vet come in and talk about all of this. So that's something that it's just interesting that was one of the takeaways. But my favorite one is from this year. One of the students actually got work experience from this event, and she's now working at the Hawke Conservancy Trust and evidently loving it. She keeps sending me bird picture updates. So that's just those really fun outcomes. And for recreating the event, this is just, it's a very arbitrary timeline of the event at the end. So around 6 months, it's when you need to start submitting event proposals, risk assessments. You send out any forms like within the RSB to get it going through those channels, and the same for us, for our student union. And it's also, I think, when you should be starting to contact speakers and just give them a heads up, even if you're not 100% sure on the day. You just say, this is roughly what we're thinking. Would you be free around this time, or what days work for you? Because we'd really like to have you there. And then about 3 months, that's when you start booking the event space, you're finalizing your speakers, and you then start to promote the event. As soon as you've got your speakers lined up, then you can just send it out and say, this is who we're expecting. And we actually did this in stages, and you'll see when I've got you promote it again, that's sort of, I think that was the key, was sometimes people forget about it, or they go, oh yeah, I'll sign up to that, or I don't know if I'm free yet, I'll see. So when you send out that reminder, it just sort of gets people going, oh yeah, I need to make sure I go to that. It's also a really good time to reconfirm speakers. We had, I think that was the most important thing, was trying to keep in contact with the speakers. We had one speaker that then wasn't sure if it was happening because we hadn't responded in about a month. So it's just sort of keeping that constant communication going and saying, yes, promise, we do still want you there. And this is also a good time to get started on any of the admin tasks. So we had like travel costs, any refunds that needed to go through, as well as parking. And then the last, just sending out a reminder to everyone, so the speakers and the attendees, getting permits in place, making sure the food and drink is sorted, because also you need to pre-warn sort of any companies. You can't just surprise order 30 people, because I don't think they'd be too happy. And then you have your event. So I think the main 3 lessons that we learned was that it has to be a free event. This is just something, it just comes at a cost to the society organizing it, but honestly, it works out so well in the end. This has had really good engagement, and also the feedback has been it's really heartening actually. And I know that it's been instrumental in me in getting connections, and so I think that's the key. You don't want to pay to go to a careers event. The second one is that it has to be in person. I think that was the main thing as well about this event, is that because it was in person, it meant that you're getting those connections back. You've experienced for a lot longer than we have. We only had high school basically, and then we had COVID, to have networking opportunities. But really, that's how you get your name out there, you get connections, you get opportunities. So I think that was the most important bit. And then having an allocated networking time, either the lunch and or afterwards, just giving people that opportunity to really focus on getting those connections down and making sure that you can get contact information and similar things. So then looking at where it's going in the future, there's opportunities to partner with more institutions. So obviously this is done at the moment through the RSB, but there's also the RSC and the BES and loads of other societies and organizations that might like to get lumped into this, or present speakers for it, or provide leaflets and such. And this is also a good opportunity to reach out to other biological societies, other universities, and create connections that we haven't previously had. And I think for us as students, that was what was particularly exciting, is suddenly we're going, oh my God, we're talking with students from Reading and Cambridge and all of this. And it's just sort of exciting to get to know that there's other people out there. And these are the people that we're entering the workforce with as well. So I think that was really crucial for us. And also then just looking at how it can go further with the RSB. So I mentioned at the beginning of the day, we had a talk, like it's just an introduction outlining the day and what the RSB is and their involvement in this. But it also presents the opportunity for the RSB to have stalls and leaflets, and understanding why you should be involved in it and the benefits of it, because it's not often explained. And obviously it engages younger audiences. And I've got the picture up here of one of our articles. And I think that was also the main thing, is getting it out there and promoting it after the event, like an event like this, where we say, look, this is what happened. It's coming up again. So if you missed it, you know, you can get there now. And the potential also of opening it up to younger, like A-level students, it's a possibility. Although I think for this event in particular, the main focus is still staying at university students, because that's you know, that's how we operate, that's how we think now, and that's sort of the level of speakers that we're aiming for, and it allows the speakers to be that more technical and precise in their work and how they've entered the workforce. So with that, that's basically a whole summary of 2 years and a bit. So I don't know if I can stop sharing and we can go into questions or anything.
Thank you so much, Olivia. I don't know how we do a round of applause on Zoom. Yeah, very, very good. Oh, it was also beautiful to see those pictures again.
Yeah.
I suppose we can listen first from the audience, and whether there are questions or observation or suggestions, anything that I would probably is easier to just unmute and
if I can just start there, I have a comment and a question. I think the comment is that it's, you know, really, I think the success of both these two meetings has been amazing, considering the problems and challenges that you were faced with. With the first one, we're only just in the process of coming out of COVID pandemic. And that's what really forced us to have the sort of hybridization element of it, because I think if it hadn't been for COVID, we wouldn't have even attempted that. But with the second meeting, with the train strikes, you know, it's really amazing. It's really amazing that you had that many people at these meetings. I think it's fantastic what you've achieved under those difficult circumstances. The question really is, I'm interested in the universities that you managed the other universities that you managed to bring in. Which ones were they?
So in our first year, when we had the hybridized one, we had a university in Italy. Obviously, I doubt they'll be coming to a future one. We had Cambridge, because I had personal connections there and I got the word out through that, and they were all really excited. They were set to come down bar train strikes, so they tried to dial in online. And then I believe that may have been, I think there might have been one other from Reading, but I'm not sure if they actually ended up attending. And then in this year's event, we had a lot more local universities. So we had Reading, loads from Kingston. We reached out to Surrey, but I don't think anybody came. We had Reading University, we had Liverporium, we had UCL, we had oh my gosh, what's it called, Imperial as well. So we sort of had more London-ward unis, so Surrey and London unis, and that was just partially who we reached out to, but also who was close enough to attend. You know, I think the furthest you'd be willing to go is probably like an hour, for this sort of event, because otherwise your university might have similar ones. So more convenient.
Yeah. Prem, can you unmute?
Oh.
I can probably help with unmuting if who should I unmute?
Prem.
I think he's done.
All right, he did it. Yeah.
Well, I congratulate Olivia for excellent presentation. She has covered a lot of areas, and had mentioned her approach to various universities. I will suggest to take this issue of the climate, which is the most important thing being faced in the world. You have some members who are scattered all around the world, must be like India, Australia, America. I mean, you can look into it who are your members in the different countries in the world. And you interact with them also in a meaningful way. I said, look, we have to join together because our mission has to be one, all biologists. And that is criteria number one, how to contend with this climate, which is a worrying part for all of us. And in that one, how to go about it, because just by our presentation and talking, okay, but we have to be very practical in the sense we should meet together, put your head together, and you all are intellectuals except me. So it can work very well. And if there is any input you want from me, I will be, but I have a mobility problem. I'm not able to drive or go here and there. You will be amazed that I'm 90 years of age, but still I'm interested in biology. And whatever contribution I can make, I will be very happy to help anybody who wants to have it. But we all have one mission, how to contain this climate. And we have to grab it because at the moment it is slipping from our hands, slipping. And what will be the outcome, we do not know. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Yeah, that's a very important point. And surely you mentioned, I don't know how easy that would be to have such a network, but something to think for Olivia than the organization of it. Because I think it's a fine balance between what they've done, which is already quite complicated, and every time you scale these things. I don't want to talk for Olivia though, but there are levels of complication and to maintain then the scope. But yeah, you think, Olivia, that would lead to hybrids having this sort of network, like almost like a worldwide, and that is, I mean, it was really difficult to open in that way. It seems like an obvious thing to do, but it's so difficult to manage.
Yeah, so so I've attended something from Applied Ecology, and they did a similar sort of global discussions. They had someone dial in from Australia, someone from Hong Kong, and then obviously a couple from London, and just sort of getting minds together to have that sort of event. But I think that delves away from a Young Biologist Forum, in that this event at the moment, it's aimed to be like a sort of a careers event. It gives you your avenues into the world, instead of creating a place to talk about the current issues. But it's something that I've wanted to set up like officially, is that what we had in my first and second year, we stopped it in third year just because we all got too busy, but we had biodiversity and biscuits. It was just something we did as a friend group. Every 2 weeks we'd meet up and talk about current issues, what we thought we could do, and any, sort of having that almost like a Young Biologist Forum, but it's just a different format. So it's a meeting of young biologists, but that's to solve problems and discuss them, whereas this was more to get into your world of work. So I think that, a global one then obviously does, I think you would have to have it as a complete online event. And I think it would obviously make it easier, the same way we have these meetings. It means people can dial in, from wherever they are, and it opens it up to a much wider discussion for something like that.
Sorry, just to conclude from my side, I think a little bit of that happened when Scott, the veterinary vet on the hill is like because of his sort of activity now in war zone, that led a little bit to that sort of, it went to a much bigger, so there was the career, there was the everything that was required plus. And so that was a case where there was opportunity to open the discussion.
Yeah, actually, I just realized one thing I never actually said was how the speakers were set up. I don't know if anybody is going to find it particularly informative, but what we had the speakers, obviously those questions they answered, but it was also up to them, whatever else they wanted to include that they thought was important for it. So like we had Scott, he said his work on the front lines in Ukraine, but he also had what you have to do to be a vet. It's not all petting animals, you have to deal with people and just considerations that people might not have made. But they gave their talk, and then what happened is we allocated about 10 minutes afterwards for people just to ask questions. That was sort of a more formal, you were still seated and the speaker was still at the front of the room, so it wasn't quite mingling, but then it gave it sort of, it had a natural progression from their talk to some questions, and then you could pick that up back outside in the lobby. And obviously that's the opportunity then when people can ask about sort of wider global questions that might be related to their career paths.
Ian,
Olivia,
do you? Yeah.
Yeah, Olivia, did you have any sort of resistance from potential speakers, saying thanks but no thanks?
Yes.
And if so, what do you think were the reasons for people for the reluctance to participate?
So I think the main one that we sort of bumped into, nobody was outright rude. We never encountered anybody that was like, no. And you're just like, oh, okay, sorry. Most people actually gave a reason as well. So for a lot of them, it was just the time and or the transport. So like if we go back to Scott, he literally only came for his presentation and he stayed for the lunch. We made sure that he was that slot right before so that he could stay and do a bit of networking, and then he had to leave to go back to his kids. So we did work when we could, we worked around people, but that was the main issue, and the sort of rebut we had was people going, actually, I'm not coming 2 hours away to talk to you guys. Like, yeah, I would love to. And if you do something online or you guys ever come out here, they'd be happy to work something else out. We had others where just the day didn't work, but we actually had people that then suggested, and they said, oh, well, I can't do this, but I'd still love to come back and talk to you guys. So can we arrange another day? So we just arranged it a couple months later as a speaker session, a completely unrelated speaker session. Those were the main issues. We had some speakers that as much as we wanted them there, they just didn't respond to any communication, or they'd respond once in a blue moon fortnight and the stars had to align, so it's sort of hit and miss with some of them, but otherwise most people, nobody was rude. We didn't have that many issues per se. I think it's just sort of hit or miss with the speakers.
Yeah. So Ian, go ahead. I'm just looking at.
So I'm just thinking, do you think getting speakers is your biggest challenge?
I think so. I think as soon as it's set up, the benefit is because we had 5 speakers from organismal and molecular. Obviously, there's some people that have overlapped, but in general, that's a lot of people that you're going to hear from, you're going to meet, and you're going to mingle with. So as a student, it's a very good and lucrative opportunity. You don't go, oh no, I'm kind of busy on that weekend anyways, don't think I'm going to go. Like it's a lot of things. People went, oh, you know what, actually, that's pretty good. Especially we had really high engagement even from first years that wanted to just sort of see what was happening and what happens later on. I mean, it's good if they're thinking about it now, but they don't strictly have to. And obviously third years, when we're all starting to go, oh my God, I need summer work, I didn't think about that far ahead. So attendees isn't really an issue. And obviously other universities, if you think about it from their point of view as well, we've put in the legwork and they just have to turn up and they're like, yep, works for me. So yeah, the hardest bit is the speakers. it's either timing or just, again, it's incentives. You know, they're giving up basically an entire day for free. And I know one of them, again, he couldn't be there for the entire day. He said, I can do the first half, but then I'm behind on my workload, so I have to go back. So it's just also being mindful that they can't give as much as perhaps you would like. And that obviously when you're working around them with the scheduling, trying to make it work as best as you can for them. And I think that was also the benefit in having a schedule, is people knew who was speaking when. So even as an attendee, if you had something on in the morning, you can go, oh, well, that's okay, I can still make it for the last two speakers. So yeah, I think that worked well there.
And also free pizza is also a good incentive.
And yeah, I was going to say, you know what, free pizza, as soon as you say that, attendees, easy.
Yeah. I'd like to turn this question around to the audience, really, if they can think of any ways in which we can maybe help next year in terms of getting speakers. Because any suggestions from our side, from the society side, I'm sure would be greatly appreciated.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, and also widening the engagement in terms of if there are any opportunities, that would be great too, to know from anybody in the audience, because I wouldn't underestimate, and I'm not at all, the fact that it's really hard to raise engagement in general. It might seem a trivial thing, but the format that you've created, you explained so beautifully, it has got something already in it that has, really made a difference, because that's not generally what you see in events. So even if they are career events, so that's really good. Angela is, I think you can just, Angela, please just, I think you are on mute. So.
Okay. Can you hear me? Am I okay? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm actually a secondary school teacher. I have been for a number of years. And I just wanted to say, I think what you've done is really good, because when I was at university, there was no careers advice of what to do. So what do you do? So a lot of my peers didn't stay in biology. They all left into different careers. And I think that is, this is the age to get them, and in fact even younger, where they then realise there's all these careers available to them. And I think having speakers and saying to them, look, this is a job, this is what it entails, this is the money, this is what I've done other careers as well, and I think that's a really good idea what you're doing. So well done. Which is why I've come on really just to hear about it and find out a bit more, because I think that's one of the harder things, is how are we going to get the next pipeline of scientists through if they don't know what they're going to be going to in jobs. So yeah, really good work. I hope it keeps on getting bigger and bigger and bigger for you.
Sure. Yeah. I hope it will.
Unfortunately, Sasha, please, I'm saying, unfortunately, Olivia is going to leave us, but we got a good legacy, especially now with this beautiful, I have to say, with this beautiful presentation that you've done, is also a milestone for future students to look through as an informative piece of.
I think there are a number of companies, if you can get involved with them, who do kind of what's called breakfast meetings and stuff, and business meetings. And if you can put it to them that there are a number of companies who are trying to go and say, actually, who's going to be working for me in the future? And if you can kind of go onto that point of view with them and say, we're trying to help you, that might help as well. And I can think of a number of people on my LinkedIn who, I wonder if you put it on LinkedIn and actually see if you get responses. And I think you might. If you say this is what we want to do, we're just interested in overall, who would be interested? I wonder how many people, there's a lot of social engagement, and a lot of companies have this corporate idea about social engagement. So I wonder if that fits into their kind of brief as well, and that would help you in terms of like how to get more people involved.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I think Sasha. Yeah.
I was wondering, you said you were only thinking about inviting university and A-level students in. Why not GCSE students? Because I know that I'm looking ahead, even though I haven't started doing my exams for GCSEs yet. And it's interesting going to talks at universities, at the university level, and hearing about things that you might not completely understand, but concepts that you might have a little understanding of, and then asking questions at the end. And you can get a larger picture and it will help with your studies. But why are you just trying to limit it to university and perhaps A-level students? Because
so it's not strictly limited to, it's just that our target audience is obviously university. That's who we can factor to best. We are university students now, and that's who we understand, but it's also just knowing that oftentimes younger audiences don't have the same appreciation for these events, and everybody gets something different out of it depending on where you are in your study or even your career. So even from first to third year at university, first years are doing what GCSE and A-level students are doing, and just exploring their options, getting a feel what's out there, where can I go with this, whereas third years are probably then looking at graduate programs, how can I get micro placements. So it's just that the target audience is university students, and then breaking it down, potentially getting it to, like Angela, you said you're a high school teacher, and breaking it down to that level, so giving it to you, and then you can disseminate it to the students, especially if you have some that you go, oh, I know that you in particular would love this sort of event, and that you're not to say mature enough for it, but you'd actually get enough out of it that it's worth you going for a day and meeting everybody. So I think that's
we do have a lot of events at the school that I'm at, and we do put it to everyone kind of thing. Even they haven't got necessarily the knowledge of it, they still often listen, and sometimes it sparks. I agree, I kind of see what Sasha's saying, that it sparks that kind of, oh, I'm interested in that, oh, I want to find out more about that. But I also understand where you're saying about the level of where it would be. So I wonder if you could kind of like do an event kind of like tag on to it. I'm not sure how, but so it would be to do with
I know that as
probably,
well. Our university does. We like at the university we have. I can't remember what exactly they're called, but they're like A-level and GCSE days, and we basically take in the students for a day. They learn from the lecturers what they do. They learn from students. They get that university experience for a day. So I know that we offer that.
Can I just can I just intercept here just 1 second? So first of all, Sasha, thank you so much. It's it is a fantastic point you made, and actually thank you for putting it forward. I think that what Olivia mentioned was the open days, but they are slightly different. So I get your point, Sasha, but I think that the way you went is that we weren't thinking very much about that, to be honest. And but through the RSB, some of the members contacted us, and they said, "Well, but I've got my son who's in, is in A-level, and so can I join?" And that was unexpected this year, and there were two or three of them. I can't remember exactly, but. So obviously they came with parents, and so it's a slightly different audience. We didn't think about that, and but there is no reason why. Actually, you're welcome to attend. But I think it wasn't even. I don't know, Olivia, but it wasn't even in the
Yeah, I think
humanities?
no, we sort of had it like until the members mentioned, oh, my kid is with me, can they come? Is it okay? Because the other consideration too, at least from an admin point, is that with health and safety and risk assessments, you then have to include a minors section. So it's just something that if you know or think that there may be sort of minors attending, that you just have to bear that in mind. But yeah, it completely was not on our radar. I'm not entirely sure why it wasn't, but I think we were just so focused on having it as a university careers event. And obviously careers are typically just in the natural progression. It's what you do at or after university. So it wasn't something that we thought to incorporate and send to younger students.
I think that's a good point on that. I mean, when I was at school, I remember very clearly I was joined into the Royal Society of Biology. I was joined into it. I studied biology, and I was joined into it by my school. And I can't remember. I got stuff through. And I think, you know, I wonder if we have got an untapped audience in terms of like A-level students, and having something for A-level students to engage them, so that then going forward they will be engaged with what they do going through to university and beyond. So I wonder if we could, like, you know, if that's something that we could get younger people. I know I've just got a daughter doing GCSE, and she started to ask me all these questions about biology, and I kind of think, oh, it's just not out there then, is it? You know, it's not out there enough that maybe we think it is, but maybe it just isn't.
Yeah. But I think maybe then one of the differences too is that with this event, I think it's maybe this style of event that can be replicated, because I think the primary difference is what we're asking speakers. We're asking for basically a breakdown of their whole life up until this point. What did they study? How did they get there? What's their salary? What do they live like? And it's a very different approach to just saying, oh, hello, this is me. I've been in the workforce 40 years. This is what I do. And you go, oh, well, that's not really applicable, because like even when my dad, he's like, oh, just drop off your CV, they'll take it. I'm like, no, they won't. They'll just put it in the bin. If they're not looking for applicants, they're not looking for applicants, you know. So it's a very different sort of, you know, it's changed rapidly, but I think that's also something it could be replicated to A-level students, and maybe they get to ask more about their progression into the job, not strictly what the job is about. So what did you study? What were you doing at my age? What were you then looking into? You know, and it changes. Obviously, that's the time where you change the most. I mean, I went through, God knows, about 10 degrees until I settled. So, you know, you sort of fluctuate through everything. So I think that should just be replicated at an A-level or GCSE standard.
Yeah, I agree.
Great. I think that's been a great discussion. I think if any of you have any further thoughts, please feel free to email them into Thames Valley branch at RSB.
Well done, Olivia.
Yeah.
A lot of work went into that. So yeah, amazing job.
Yeah, fantastic job, Olivia.
Thank you. No, and thank you to, obviously, you all know within the RSB, you all helped massively, and Walter as well, and also Melanie. I mean, she's just popped off the camera, but because she was with with me in society last year, and it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of hard work, but it was totally worth it.